and we'll get started. So thanks everybody for joining the call today. The point of this is I want this to be interactive. So if you have questions, please stop me. Please raise your hand. I'm happy to answer questions as much as I can. I'll give a little bit of background on who I am and what I've been doing and hopefully that'll help set some context. So I'm Chris Copa. I'm based in Southern California. I've been in the Ignite group since September of last year, and I got in during the vibe coding kind of explosion. It excited me. I was able to do things that I was never able to do before. I've been a tech guy my whole life, so I'm very comfortable in the tech. I'm very comfortable in the backend systems, in configuring and working in the various platforms. I worked at Salesforce for about 7 years, so I understand the entire CRM world as well. So I'm very comfortable in high level. I understand high level, really well. So I love being in this community. I'm happy to give back. I would love to answer questions and walk you through, the steps that I took. I found this particular workshop extremely exciting, extremely interesting, and also very, very challenging. And being a tech guy, I can only imagine what a majority of the community is probably feeling when they're trying to put together directories, figure out how does this work, how am I going to monetize it, and so I hope to shed some light at least in terms of my understanding and how it's working. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those. So first and foremost, let me share my screen here so you can have some frame of reference. So I follow Julius's and um, Russell's process for steps zero and one on this document, and hopefully you all have this document. If you don't, I'll post it in the chat because I think everybody should have access to this document. This is just um, the step by step that they provided to everybody for how to go about this process. And so I start with the directory mentor. I think it's fantastic. I think it helps to answer the question of, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? Where can I find free information? And how do I get started? And so I'll show you the exact prompt that I used for this. This is the directory mentor. This is the very, very first one that I started with. And I basically, Perry gave this prompt. I'm happy to post it in the chat if anybody wants it. I took Perry's prompt and I just modified it to my use case. And this is the starting point, right? So it's if you have a domain already set up, that's great. If you don't, then I would just name it whatever it's called, and I would go through this line by line and just take out the stuff that doesn't apply, replace it with stuff that does apply, and hit enter, and away we go. And this, I think, is the starting point. This is where everybody should start. This is how do we validate the idea? How do we get information about this directory? And this is the output that it produces. It gives you some validation. This is, whether this is a strong directory or not. And then what I do is I just copy all this information from this point all the way down to the bottom down here. And I just put that into a Google Doc or Word doc. I just capture everything, whatever it says, all the phases, all the information. I just read through it. And if it says that you should be doing things like going out and finding other resources or leveraging other resources, then you should pay attention to that. But I would take all this information and copy it and put it into a doc that you can then use. The other questions that you can ask it are follow-up questions. This information is not necessarily needed for the next steps, but it does help you get a sense of how can I monetize it? What's the value of it? So again, this is another prompt, right? I just built this directory. I think it's really useful, but I don't know. How would I make money from it? So this just gives me ideas around how might I monetize it. Now, hopefully, these align with Perry's monetization tactics, right? He gave a presentation on that, and uh, these are all the different ways, right, that I might be able to make money off of this. So it's just another question. I didn't use any of this in the next steps. It was just informational for me, and it might be useful later on when I'm starting to build out the monetization pieces, but it's not necessary for necessarily going forward. And then this was another question that Perry gave. What would you estimate first year revenue? So again, very hypothetical, but it's just providing you with more context, right, around whether this is a good idea or not. I think it's helpful to ask these questions because, um, at the end of the day, the goal of this is to make money. And so having a clear idea on how it makes money, what its value is, if you're getting answers back that don't give you the numbers or the expectations that you're thinking of, well, find another directory. Or maybe it's okay to move forward if it's something that's a hobby or that you want to establish authority in, but know that it may not be a money driving kind of engagement. And then again, I think Perry always likes to push the AI. I don't think it's enough for me to want to do this project. I want you to think harder. So again, just more prompts, right, to get more information. And this at this point, this is all just informational. And so this is where I start. I don't deviate from this process. I think the GPT that they gave is awesome for this. So let me sort of pause there. Are there any questions about step one before we go any further? I want to make sure everybody's following along and that it's making sense. So I'll pause here for a second. If you have a question, feel free to ask. Raise your hand. Go off mute. Very informal, but if not, I'll wait a minute here and then we'll move on. Okay, good. So what's next? We take this first output and we then go to the next gem. So remember, the first one is a GPT prompt. The next is a gem. The difference between these is the way, it took a lot of effort for Julius and Russell to find a way to share these types of tools. The GPT, we're all used to getting custom GPTs from Perry, from others, from Nuno, from others. They're easy to share. The Gemini is a little bit different in that the only way to share, a Gemini type of resources is through a gem. And there's a significant amount of architecture that's happening behind the scenes, mainly in the engineer gem, the second gem. The first gem is fairly structured, but there's a lot happening behind the scenes that we don't see and we are not aware of. And so I really want to, thank Julius and Russell for putting this together because it's not easy. It's not easy to share, this type of these types of tools. So the second step is using the architect gem, and that's basically what this is, right? So it's how do I take the information from the first, drop it into the second, and then have it produce some information. So let's see here. Actually, this is the wrong one. Let me stop share real quick and find the right one so I can help you. Are there any questions while I go hunt for this in a minute here? I want to show you kind of the outputs and the processes that I took so that you can see that there's no magic happening here yet, right? There's some really good things that they built. Okay, so here's the right one. So let me share again. So what you'll see here is this is literally, right, the output from the first one copied into the gem. You can see here, right, this is a strong directory thesis because of the market structure. That's exactly what I copied and pasted into this. Nothing different. And I hit enter. That was it. I didn't give it any prompts. I didn't tell it anything. I just took the output from the first, dropped it into the second, hit enter. And what you're noticing is that this gem is configured to build this schema structure, right? Layer one, strategic brief. Layer two, why the niche wins on Google. Who searches for this? The revenue model. This is pre-programmed into the gem to take your topic and produce this schema. Now, one section to pay attention to, section 5, data sources. In here, it's giving you suggestions around other places that you might find information that would help you in the data enrichment process. So for me, this is an off-road trails directory. It told me you might want to go to recreation.gov, register for an API, follow the instructions here, and this might get you more information, better information, free information. So I did this. I would recommend following whatever the recommendation is in this section to leverage those resources, to use those resources, to find more information. And it tells you exactly why, it tells you exactly how to do it. And so this is an important section, and I would pay attention to this. But even if you didn't follow through with this, it's fine. You can still find information. You can still get enrichment data. These are just supplemental resources and supplemental ways to find data. Now, again, with this gem, I didn't do anything different other than pasting the output from one into here, hitting enter, and now I've got this schema. And from there, I take this, I copy all of it, the entire output, everything that you see here, right? All the way down to where it says your schema is ready, save this file. I mean, all the way through it. And then I paste it into the third gem. Second gem, sorry, third tool, and that is the engineer. And that's what this one shows you. Oops, sorry, this one, right? Layer 1 strategic brief, section 1, what this directory is. You can see that's exactly the output from this one. Nothing changed, right? Layer 1 strategic brief, section 1, what this directory is. It's the exact same thing. Copy it, paste it into here. Now, this is where things get really, really complicated. And this is probably where, a lot of people are finding challenges, finding roadblocks, getting stuck, trying to figure out what is this doing, what is going on. I don't understand. And there is a lot of configuration happening in this gem. This is not just a very simple gem. It's a gem built with multiple steps, multiple outputs, multiple configurations, and its purpose is to try to lead you through it sequentially, step by step. This is really hard to build. It's really hard to architect. It's really hard to share. And so as a result, there are a lot of things that don't work perfectly. There's errors that are created. There's configuration problems. There's things that happen. And it's just a result of the complexity, I think, of what they're trying to provide here. So when I posted that in and hit enter, what you're now seeing is this is the start of the setup and configuration to build a seed file and ultimately build an enriched data file. And it starts to create the structure for this, right? This is the schema setup. This is preparing this for Apify. So for those of you who need a refresher, Apify is the tool that's being used to search and gather and solicit enrichment data for this particular topic. It's giving you specifics around what you name things, around keys. It's giving you 2 templates, but as you can see here, these are not actually templates. This is just code, right? It didn't actually give me the file, right? It only gave me the structure of the file. And so this is where things start to get really confusing. And I was completely confused in this process as well, because this is basically asking you to build and construct these files by hand. So, these are all the listing name, listing type, listing status. These are all columns within a spreadsheet. Now, it's labeled as a CSV file because ultimately we want it as a CSV file. But if you think about it, these are all of the These are all the columns. These are all the topics, right? For the data that we're trying to capture. And this is the the information on the seed file. Below that is what the enriched file starts to look like, right? And it has even more information in it, more columns you can see. So it's going beyond the seed information. And what this is doing is this is trying to set you up for what does the seed data look like? What is the enrichment data going to look like? But again, the challenge here is that it didn't give you a file. It gave you a code snippet. And so now I have to take this and go manually build these CSV files. The gem cannot output CSV files. You have to go build them. And I don't know if that was clear, if there was confusion there, but this is the first step. And if you don't do this, then you don't have any data to work with, right? You don't have any way to even start. So let me pause there. Are there any questions up to this point? Is everybody kind of clear? Everybody following along? Everybody understand kind of where we're at up to this point? Good? Okay. So you have to build these CSV files. And basically all that is you're taking this information and you're copying and pasting it into a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, and then you have to output that as a CSV file so that you have these files to work with. The next thing is it starts to talk about these output files. This is the configuration for the actors in Apify. I don't know that it told you that, but that's what this is. This is how Apify structures how the actors are going to work. And what you probably noticed is when you went into Apify and created an actor, this file structure doesn't exist, or at least it doesn't exist as it's laid out. There are things missing, there are folders missing, there are sub files missing. So this is a manual step. It's manual. You have to go in and you have to create the same structure in Apify. And I can show you what that looks like. So if I go into my actors, this was the very, very first actor that I created. And if you look at how it was built, if I look at the code, it's this. This is the structure that it's talking about. This is my actor, and this is how it's set up. So you need these files in these subfolders. So source, helpers, enrich, validate. That should look the same as here. Source, helpers, enrich, validate. Underneath source, you have transform and main. Here you have under source, you have transform, and where did main go? And main, right? These two. So that's what this is telling you. Some of these files won't exist. You have to manually create them. Some of the folders won't exist. You have to create them. So there wasn't, specific information here that helped you with that, but that's basically what this is telling you. It's also giving you what needs to be in the contents of those files, at least the first three. Package.json needs to have this code configuration. So again, if I go back and I look at package.json, wherever that is down here, right? This is the code that's needed to be able to run this actor. So it's literally a copy and paste. You have to copy this. You have to clear out anything that's in the existing JSON file, paste it in, and save it. And that's the same for each of these files. The actor.json and the input schema.json, this is the code that you have to copy and paste into those files. What I can tell you is that this produces an error every single time because of this actor.json. So what you'll notice here is this is a subfolder. This is the high level folder actor, and then we have this file called actor.json. But if you look here, it thinks that you actually have you actually have another layer. This is an error. This is just something that the gem produces. If you're having problems getting it to build, it's probably because the syntax in here is wrong. This should be actually input, and this dot actor needs to be removed. Now, look, what happens, right? So, how do you find this stuff out? What happens is you try to build something in here. You'll hit build, and you'll get an error on the screen. And so, what do? And I think you saw this numerous times. Julius demoed this numerous times. All you do is you come in and you have to take the error messages, drop them into this gem, and it will help you figure it out. It's the only recommendation I can give you is once you have an error, once you have something that doesn't look right, once you have something that breaks, you take the error, you take a screenshot of it, and you drop it back into the gem, and it starts to help you out. So where was I in this process? Okay, great. I saw all this information. I started to copy this into the various files. Then you'll see the gem starts to give you the next steps, right? So great, start one, phase one is almost complete. Fantastic. Okay, go through and do these things, right? It's going to be step 2, step 3, step 4. When your folders and config files are ready, so once I've created that structure in Appify, then I can say ready to code, and you'll be ready to move on. So I just, I put in here, generate the seed file. Generate the seed file. What that does is it creates this prompt. Now, again, this is a little bit confusing. Like, what is it doing here? I don't understand. How come it didn't just create the seed file for me? It doesn't do that. It only creates the prompt that it wants you to take to another chat window to use. So again, the gem can't create the seed file. It can only create the prompt that lets you then generate the seed file. So look, it's assuming that you've created the seed CSV file. And for me, this was the prompt that it gave me. I'm building a seed file for this off-road directory. It wants me to replace the state with the state of my choice. And that shows up in 2 places. And so what I have to do is I have to take this into another window. It doesn't matter. You can put it into ChatGPT. You can put it into a Google Gemini. You can put it into Claude. It doesn't matter. It goes through and it will then create this seed file. And it uses however many, let's see if it tells me. Yeah, so exactly 200 rows, right? So I'm creating 200 rows of sample data is basically what's happening. It recommended that I do this for 10 different states, right? So it says here, go up to your target states. So go to do this for Utah, do this for Colorado, do this for Arizona, do this for California, do it for whatever geos you want to generate seed information for. So that's what I did. I took this prompt, I changed the state name, I went into another window, I put it in, and it spit out the seed information. Now, what's the problem with that? I did that 10 times. I have 10 independent seed data files now that I have to now combine, right? Because I don't run these each individually. I want to have one seed file that I can run in Appify to get all information. So again, another challenge, another difficult thing to do. I now have to copy and paste from seed file, from these individual seed files into kind of one master seed file to build my master seed file. So again, there's a lot of complexity in this. There's a lot of steps, right, to get right. And so, but once you do that, right, now you can start to move through this. And you can see even I had questions about, like, are all values supposed to be in a single column? Are they supposed to be comma separated? Like, things weren't working out for me either, right? And so I would give it questions, and it would give me answers. At the end of this, I had a seed file. I had one seed file with roughly 2,000 rows of data that I could then take and start the next, kind of the next step, the next process. Let me pause there, right? There's a lot that's happened up to this point in just trying to get the seed information. So what questions can I answer? What clarification? Is there anything at this point that people need sort of help with?
You're not getting a lot of engagement. So I'll pop in and say,
Yeah, yeah,
I was also very confused with the entire directorist and then having to go into WordPress and then having to go back to Elementor, which really gave me anxiety. And I've also lived in Claude Code for a while. So all of this is just so incredibly overwhelming. So because I was finding it very overwhelming, to follow the process week by week, I went and just took all the documents that they gave us. I handed it to Claude and I said, "Go figure this out, and I want you to build this out in Cloudflare Pages, and I want you to go figure out how to do my Apify actor because I don't want to read all this." And then in the end, I'm probably 80% there with my site, and it was able to go, based on I have a very niche, like mine is super niche because
yep,
it's complementary to my business and it's a marketing funnel into my current business. And it's worked out beautifully. My and I want to see where you went with this because I heard the reason that I jumped on this is because as I was fast forwarding through the the recordings, I saw that you didn't do it this way, that you did it in Cloud Code, and that
you're right.
you are using Cloudflare workers. So I'm curious, I want to hear obviously how you did that, and then right now and I'm sure you might get to this, where I'm having a hard time is the users and all of that, and how do I and incorporate some of that aspect of it. But I have to agree that I'm sure everybody else on the call is probably bleary-eyed. I mean, this is so complex. There's so much information
Yep,
here. And because I do not enjoy living in the details, I'm more of a visionary. I want to handle less and less.
yep,
I want, and so I'm bleary-eyed till now, but I understand where you're going, but there are multiple paths to success here, I do want to say.
there are. And Sarah, thanks for saying that. And Mackenzie, I see your post as well. So I wanted to start here because I wanted to acknowledge that this is not an easy process, but I think it's important for people to understand what's happening, right? And how to navigate through it. Um, to Sarah's point, I went through the entire process step by step, following the entire guide right in here, following all of the steps, following all the information, and I finally, right, did get to an enriched data file. It took more than a day of work, of constant prompting and back and forth, and what's this error, and how do I fix that? And so, similar to Sarah, I said, I don't ever want to do this again. Um, I literally asked, I started in Claude Chat and I said, how do I reverse engineer the engineering bot, this gem? How do I reverse engineer it? Well, unfortunately, you can't. And unless Julius was willing to share all of the code and everything that he used to build it, the best you can do is let Claude try to understand what it's doing by feeding it the entire process that I went through to get to the end result. So similar to Sarah, that's what I did. I took every chat. So I took the directory mentor chat, I took the architect chat, I took the engineer chat with all of the history. And I mean, it took three different conversations to finish this, right, in the gem. And I fed all of it into Claude Chat and said, I want you to build this 100% automated. I don't ever want to touch Apify. I don't ever want to touch a configuration file. I don't ever want to have to do anything but say, provide me with some validation steps. So just so that I know you're on the right track and I can look at things, but then I want you to automate it. I don't want to have to enter API keys. I don't want to have to enter code. And similar to Sarah, it did. Now, I asked it, what's the best way to create a repeatable process for this, right? Because I didn't just want to do it once. And the problem with doing it in chat is that you can't really set up the right structure to do this as a repeatable process. So I have access to chat, I have access to cowork, I have access to code. It picked cowork, Claude cowork, to build this function. And the reason is because I can give it very specific instructions on how to do the job, but I can also give it frameworks and examples of what the outputs need to look like as part of the resources that it uses. And so that's what it did. So in Claude Cowork, I now have a directory pipeline project. And as a part of that project, I have instructions, and these are all the instructions that it created. And believe me, this took multiple iterations to get this right. But it now has instructions on how it needs to work. It also has context in here, right, of things that it needs to build, right? So again, if you look into here, it has information on how it builds things, right? The scripts that it's using, how, what the sample files look like. It went through and built all of the structure, right, on how to actually run this completely agnostic, right? So if you look here, source, helpers, this should look very similar, right? Here's the enrich.js file that it's leveraging so it knows what it needs to create. Here's the validate.js, here's the main.js, here's the transform.js. All of these should look very familiar because this is how Appify gets configured. So Claude Cowork took it and built an entire process around how to do this. Now, the other thing with Cowork is I can hook it to Appify. There's a connector for Appify. So I can have it run commands and automations to build things automatically for me in Appify. I can give it the API keys that you need, right? You all know that you need a Google API key with some settings. You need an OpenAI key with some settings. I can give that to this tool to be able to do that. So after a lot of work and after a lot of configuration, I now have a tool that I can literally come into here and I still go through the first two steps. I don't ignore those. This doesn't do directory mentor. This doesn't do architect. I take the output from the architect. I drop it into this chat window. I hit go and it runs. And it does all of the work. It builds the seed files for me because project can create a seed file. It has the ability to create files. So it builds the seed files for me. And I can show you, this is an example, right, of all the different things that it does and it runs. I'll go up to the top here so you can see, like, this is literally how, how we started this. And you can see it's starting to create the schemas. It's starting to create the directory seeds. I'm telling it to proceed. Now, this is all when I was doing testing, so there's a lot more conversation happening here, right? And I would say, it prompted me like, do I want to do more records? I can hit scale and it will scale. It set up the batching for me, right? Because you only want to run certain batches so that it optimizes how Appify runs. It sets up the batching. It generates, generating seed files. It does that automatically. And you can see here when it gets like, there's my seed file. It automatically generated it for me. And again, this is in the testing, right? Evaluate how it's being created, right? I'm not seeing the results that I wanted. This is when I was creating this. So this is all in the build process. This is all taken care of now. But things that I saw that weren't working, it went in and it fixed it, right? And so it went through all of this, and at the end of the day, what I ended up with was an enriched data file. It'll show up here, right? So here's my directory enriched data file that was finally produced as a result of going through this entire process. So I guess what I'm saying at this point is I don't do any of the things that I showed you before. Um, I don't do any of that manual work. I don't do any of that manual labor. I have a tool now that allows me to input the information and then just automatically build the enriched data file. Let me sort of pause there. Questions, concerns,
I
thoughts.
have a question. So when you say you seeded it, so I understand because I went through and I did my original seeding, right? Are you also having it uh like get new seeding? I don't even know if that's the right way to say it. Why do you have it set up in the directory pipeline? Are you trying to get like new data every month? Because there's only so many, if you're doing trails, there's only so many trails. So shouldn't you just really just seed once? And then how are you going to use this after you've seeded? Will you still use Cowork? By the way, I haven't used Cowork since like February. I live in code.
Yep.
So I don't even know how to go back, but I'm like looking at your context and how you set it up and it looks beautiful. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool because we get used to one. I feel like I do anyway. I get comfortable working in one area and then I'm like, you want me to do what? You want me to go where and do what?
Yeah.
I don't want to do
And
that.
yeah, and look, I do 90% of my work in code, but when I asked it which was the optimal way to build this piece, it chose cowork. And it looked at all the variability. And part of it is because it's very visual, it's very graphic, right? It can produce the outputs that I needed. Whereas code, I'd have to create skills or things to be able to generate, documents and things. Whereas cowork could just do it. Now, so to answer your question though, yes, there are a limited amount of trails, but think about it. I started with 2,000 trails, 200 in the western states of the United States, 10 western states. If I want this to be a true directory, I need to do that for all 50 states. And there may be more than 200 trails in any one given state. There's no reason why this couldn't be a global thing. There's off-roading and trails all over the country. It's not just off-roading; it's hiking trails. It's dirt bike trails. Like you think about how you can continue to expand and evolve. This is a process that can be. You can do this over and over and over and over again. So I could say, well, let's take it to the next 10 states. Let's take it to the next 20 states. Let's take it to hiking trails. Let's take it to, whatever. Like you can run this process over and over and over again. And yeah, trails aren't going to change very much, but think about different directories, right? Like I have another one, it's gluten-free caterers. That may change all the time. So I may run this quarterly to get the latest information. What places are no longer in business? What new places have popped up, right? So some of it depends on what your directory is, because um, some of it might be highly volatile. There's new things popping up and going down all the time. Some of it is going to be much more static, like the trails thing might be more static, but I can expand it, right? I can go bigger. So that's how I would answer your question is I did it. This was my sample size, and I recommend thinking within a sample size that you can manage and look at the data and verify and validate before you do the big bang, right? Like I don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars doing directory enrichment for a process that I don't know actually works, right? So start small and then verify it and then look to expand.
So basically, you want to use this to with an option to expand the seating. Are you going to continue to build from Cowork, or are you like have you built out the site yet?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
okay.
So this is step one, right? This is just replacing up to the point where you get the enriched data file. That's all this does. This just produces the enriched data file. Now from here, you have options. You can take the enriched data file and you can move it to Replit and use Replit and build your directory in Replit. You can take the enriched data file and move it to WordPress and use WordPress and Directorist and Elementor and build your sites, right? Using one of those. At the end of the day, you have to get to an enriched data file. That's the starting point. That's what this step produces. For me, I used Replit a lot when I started out, and I graduated from Replit. I moved on to Claude Code and doing things in Claude Code. I personally, and please, this is just my personal opinion, I have never had luck with WordPress. I find it very challenging. I find it difficult to to build and develop in it. I'm just not a WordPress guy. I personally use Lovable for all of my website stuff, but for this was not going to be able to be built in Lovable. So what I did was I took all of the resources that Julius and Russell gave me on the directories piece, the giant tar file, the zip file, the directories mapping, all of it, and I threw it into Claude Code, and I said, I need you to build me a feature by feature parity web hosting solution to be able to host an enriched data file as a directory. Now, again, similar to Sarah, I'm very comfortable working in Claude Code. I do it every day. I build all kinds of crazy stuff in Claude Code. I understand it. I know it. I work in Cloudflare all day long. I work in the various tools that are associated with that. I'm very comfortable with that. So I had Claude build me a directory solution. And so what that looks like is this. This is how my directory gets published. And I did this through Claude Code. I took the enriched data file at the end of that co-work project and said, here's the enrichment file. Go and let me take this enrichment file and build me a directory. And this is what it built. So and this should look very similar, right, to what's available in WordPress or in Replit, right? It pulls in pictures, it pulls in ratings, it's got categories, it's got location. And look, I've had to tweak this a million times. I've had to optimize it, to make it exactly right. But I can go into a listing here, right, and it'll give me the information. It gives me the location. I had to do a lot of work on the mapping, right? The mapping piece. All of the information. Here's all the enriched seed data, all the FAQ information that came in, right, around what this trail is and all the different questions. So this is how I am now hosting directories. I'm doing it through a process that I built in Claude Code. Here's the other one that I built, right? Gluten-free caterers. So it gave me these two categories to begin with: full service or drop off meal prep. So if I come in, it gives me pictures from the listings. It gives me information, right? So all of this again came from my enriched data file, and I used the enriched data file and dropped it into my builder, and now it's building this. You can do the same thing using the enriched data file and doing it in Replit. There's a whole process, and Russell's done lots of trainings on it. Same thing with WordPress. You can go that route. You can take the enriched data file and drop it into WordPress using directories and do all the mappings and do all that sort of stuff. This is how I chose to do it because I'm just much more comfortable working in this environment. So let me pause there. Questions?
Chris, are you using Claude to actually do the site build as well, or is it all done
Yes.
with Replit?
No, I do not use Replit. I do not use WordPress. I use Claude Code to build it, and it built it using Cloudflare pages. I mean, I can give you the whole architecture if you want to see like what it did. It's using a database on the back end. Now, the other thing that I did, and I'll state it very clearly, if you want to talk to me about how this might work for you, I'm happy to talk to you about that. I built this to potentially market it as a done for you service. So the entire architecture that I built, I thought this is something that people could use. So the entire Claude Code architecture for this is multi-tenant, multi-directory aware. Every one of these directories, every one of the enrichment files that I put into my builder creates a separate container, a separate bucket. It can be I can do this for somebody else, right? And again, if you're curious about it, reach out to me. I don't want to pitch anybody. I don't want to sell to anybody here because there are resources where you can do this, on your own. I'm happy to help you as much as I can. Russell and Julius, are also doing this. But if and I've had people reach out and say, look, I just have the idea. I don't want to worry about any of the tech, and this is kind of what I do. I'm a tech guy, so I'm happy to help do the delivery and the implementation if people have ideas. So, we can talk about that. And if you just need the enrichment file, great. I can give you a full enrichment file if that's what you want. If you want the whole thing hosted and up and running in something similar to this with your logo, your branding, your everything, I'm happy to have a conversation. I don't want to make anybody feel like they're obligated. And the other thing that I will mention right now, just so everybody is clear, if you are a new Ignite member, meaning you signed up during the Bigfoot Directories promo, you basically get this for free. I've been talking to Julius offline. I'm collaborating with him to making sure that I'm helping him and he's helping to clarify things. And if you're a new member, they will build you your first directory from start to finish for free. You should take advantage of that. You can come with an idea and they will build the entire enrichment file for you. And then you can choose whether you want it hosted on Replit or WordPress. Those are your two options for them. And they will build it for you. And they'll do it. The first one, they'll do it for free. It's part of the benefit that you got when you signed up as a new Ignite member. So please don't pay me, don't pay anybody else to do this for you. If you newly signed up, take advantage of it. Fill out the form and get in the queue. And if you come with some of it already done, it just helps accelerate the process. But I did confirm with Julius 100%. That's the offer. They will build this for you from start to scratch, from start to end. But you also need to.
They want to build it.
Yep, good.
They want to build it in Directorist, right? Like I'm a new.
Well, either they will.
Okay.
Look, they will build it in Replit or Directorist. I confirmed with Julius. You have a choice of which one, but they're not going to do it in Claude Code. They're not going to do it in something outside of their platform.
Correct.
So yes, if you don't want either one of those, then you're stuck with doing something like this where you're building it yourself.
So can you talk a little bit about how you're planning on monetizing? I mean, it's beautiful, by the way. How are you planning on monetizing your?
Yeah, so this is the other challenge, and they do have an offering that they'll be talking to you about if you're going that route and having them do it. They will have an offering that they'll talk about how do you then layer in the monetization, right? So look, one of the monetization plays, and we can use this as an example, is if I come into this and this is my business, right? I should be able to claim this. I want to claim this business, and then I want to provide more information. I want to enhance it, right? I may want this business to be featured, right, on this directory. So maybe I'm going to pay for placement. Maybe I'm going to pay for advertising, right?
How do you spell?
There are 16 models that Perry shared for monetizing directories. So here's what I did. This is just me. I took that entire presentation that Perry gave and I dropped it into my Claude code that already knows how it built this directory. And I said, build every monetization option for this directory. Build it, build the foundation for it, build the structure for it. Now, the problem is you can't really build all of it in the directory, right? Like there's very little in here that helps me manage contacts and email marketing and campaigns. That's not the purpose of the directory. So in my opinion, and how I've done it is the way I'm going to be doing this going forward is I will use high-level sub-accounts. I will have a unique high-level sub-account for every directory that I build. So Gluten Free Caterers will have its own high-level sub-account. that I will hook in to the directory, and it will manage contacts, membership, advertising, paid ads, subscriptions, all of the monetization options that are available will all be handled through the integration with High Level. To me, that's the cleanest way to do it. It provides me with a way to create new newsletters, do email campaigns, do marketing, do communication, do all of it through a system, a CRM that's designed to do that. The directory isn't designed to do that. It's designed to do a few of those things. Like they have this signing to claim listing, but I don't know, how do I monetize that? How do I charge somebody for that? Right? I'm not going to build payment processing into this directory. I want the payment processing to happen in the CRM where I have all the contact information and the contractual information and the agreements and all of that stuff. So that's how I'm dealing with the monetization piece. I'm building it into the back end. I'm building it into each directory is going to have its own hook into its own sub account, so I can keep it clean, right? I want to know, what's happening with gluten-free caterers and how I'm monetizing that different from Trail Scout. Trail Scout's going to have its own sub account with its own contacts and its own people and its own email campaigns and all the other stuff. And so that's something that I think they're going to talk about this week, actually, is the monetization piece. And so I'm really curious because I'll probably take the outputs from that call tomorrow and feed it into my Claude code and say optimize whatever the plan is for monetization, optimize it, right? Based on Perry's recommendations. That's the piece I think that they're going to get to. That's the piece I think that everybody should be thinking about is this is great, showing it's great, becoming the authority is great. How do I monetize it? But not only that, how do I actually operationalize the monetization, right? Just saying I want to monetize it is one thing. If I don't have the back end to actually execute on it, then it becomes really hard. So that's how I'm doing it. Any other questions? Anything else I can answer for anybody?
Yeah, that's pretty good, Chris. I've got a background a bit like yours actually, software and tech, and ERP mainly, and then more recently Sugar CRM,
Mm-hmm.
which is, as you know, a bit like Salesforce.
Yep.
But yeah, pretty impressive what you built.
Yeah, thanks. And look, I'm happy to talk more about this. I'm happy to share as much as I can. I mean, I'd love to answer questions. Obviously, if you want to talk to me about, what does a done for you look like, just ping me through the community. You can find my email in various places. Like I said, take advantage of this. If you're a new Ignite member, take advantage of the services that they're offering. Don't rely on me. Like they will do it for you. They'll do at least one for you. Now after that, you're gonna have to figure out what do I do, and there's a whole another layer of this. And that's the directories are not one and done. This is a living, breathing thing. So now you have to think about, okay, how do I maintain it? How do I manage it? How do I further enrich the data? How do I expand it? How do I make sure it's up to date? How do I monetize it? Those are ongoing, right? This doesn't just happen once and you stand up the directory and then you're done. You've got to think about, what's the ongoing plan for that, and hopefully the monetization pays for the ongoing maintenance and upkeep, because there is maintenance and upkeep with this. So that's not absent here, right? Yes, you can get it to a point where you can now advertise it and show it, but if your information is stale or outdated, then obviously your authority will start to be affected as well.
Yeah, I'm at that stage to where I'm like, all right, I have everything built. I have most of what I want on there. And now I'm like, I need to go warm this domain. How do I reach out to these people and let them know I have this listing? Where do I set that up? And I am not a Go High Level fan. I've had it for years. I feel like it's so cumbersome and complicated, but I understand it's probably the best use case for this. But that's right now where I'm struggling. I'm like, okay, great. Now what? Because there has to be the marketing piece. There is, I have found, Chris, that it's been very easy to, as long as you set up the schema and Pages, and Cloudflare Pages to rank. So I think it's really good way to rank, and I think that the your site, my site will do very very well. But then there's the now what piece of it of like right after this. So
Yeah,
I might reach out to you about that part because I just do
yeah,
not
and
like
I would
that.
say, personally, I would not build a CRM. There's just no value in it, right? Like Springboard and High Level are so cheap and so inexpensive. It does all the functionality, even with the challenges that you may have had in the past. It is still the best tool to use for the
Yeah, but
campaigns and for the communication.
you had to use a back end for the what were you using? I built mine on Supabase because I have everything on Supa. You still have to have a directory back behind
Yeah, but
that
you don't want to
supports
build a
it.
CRM. Yeah, I just don't. I don't think there's any value in building a CRM for inside the directory.
What do you
And again,
mean by building a CRM inside the directory? I don't understand what that means.
so let me show you.
Because we all have,
So
you have to have some sort of a database.
this is the back end. This is the back end of the directory, right? This is the database. Basically, you're looking at every single listing, right? This is how it gets surfaced. So this is the interface that I built, right? So it has the dashboard, it has the entries, it has everything, right? In terms of the categories, like I can modify all of this. Now this is fine for managing the directories, right? But for memberships, for claims, for submissions, the fact that I can have the information in here doesn't give me the ability to interact with it. I can't do campaigns through here unless I build a full campaign engine. Like that's a waste of time. It already exists in High Level, right? I don't have the
Gotcha.
ability to send email. I don't have the ability to do payment processing. I don't have the ability to sell ads. I don't have the ability to do any of that transactional monetization in the directory unless I build it. And I am nowhere near skilled enough to verify and validate that it's working. I already have High Level and it does all of those. So I'm just
Gotcha.
building the integration to say if I want to manage membership, I'm going to do it through High Level. I'm going to
I
manage,
understand.
the optimization piece. So that's what I'm saying is I don't find value in building those tools for the directory. The tools already exist. I'm gonna leverage them because they do a far better job than I could ever create or Claude could ever
Oh, I
create.
agree. Yeah, I agree. And thank you for explaining that because
Yep.
I did bring payment processing into mine, um, but I'm bringing it to where I'm going to do sales from it and then they're going to benefit. It's kind of like a back and forth type of thing. So it's going to be a little bit different than this. So it's a different type of
Yeah.
monetization.
Yeah. I just think like, how do I manage leads? How do I manage an opportunity pipeline? How do I manage the entire sales process? How do I
That
manage,
is where I'm struggling with.
access?
Yeah.
Like there's no way to do it in the directory. And I don't see any value in building it. Yeah, you can do all of it in High Level. And so that's why, and like I let Claude Code figure out how to do the integration. I mean, look, I've built really sophisticated tools to connect into High Level, so it's highly automated. I do very little manual work at High Level, but that's just because of the tools that I built. And that's my plan is, this will be a snapshot. Once I get it fully fleshed out, this will be a snapshot that goes into High Level. It'll have all the monetization pieces already built. It'll have the
Oh, beautiful.
automation, it'll have the campaigns, it'll have it already done. So literally it's like come to me with a domain and branding and you're kind of done. Like it'll just be configured, right? Because I've done it with at least two of my own directories in testing.
Cool. Well, this has been very helpful, Chris. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks everybody. I'll post the recording and we'll see you on the Ignite calls and the directory calls. If you do have any questions, reach out. I'm happy to chat offline as well. But hopefully it was helpful and thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Really
Yep,
appreciate it.
absolutely. Bye guys.
Cheers.